It wasn't me. I didn't do it. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by, taking a look at my stuff right quick. So I have the round 6 game for you between Peter Svidler and Wesley. So, as always, for all of my people in the Philippines, magandang umaga, almasal tayo, 3:41 in the morning. Still pretty early for, I think, pretty much all of you, but magandang umaga to you. Kamusta na? Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by, taking a look at my video. Anybody who is coming from Russia or who does speak Russian, I'll say привет to you. Spasibo for coming by and taking a look at my stuff. It's another Russian versus American / Filipino player. Yeah. So for all you guys from the Philippines, all the other dialects, I got you at the end of the video as always. And I have an extra word that I learned, a little phrase that I learned. So see what's cracking with that. But if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look at this round 6 game. See what we got. All right, so we got knight to f3, got d5, c4, got e6. And so we have what is called the English Agincourt variation. Of course, you can always go c4 first, and then e6 comes, and that's considered the Agincourt. But you guys can pretty much tell this is a c4 type of opening. But as something extra I wanted to mention that I haven't really too much ever mentioned before is actually something called transpositions. I mention a lot, that you can have many different options when you're going from different openings and stuff like that. So for those of you who watch my stuff in the past, this position should actually kind of like be familiar to you. It should strike kind of something in you to be like, hey, I could go d4 here, right? So basically this brings you into the Queen's Gambit decline type situations. Of course, you have like Catalans, or you have Slavs, or, just regular, like Queen's Gambit type situations and stuff like that. So something that certain players use, a majority of players, especially when you get to the top level, is something called transpositions. It's basically many different types of ways that you can get to the same position. So it kind of simplifies positions a little bit for you and definitely helps you out of the opening and sometimes even into the middle game. You can start off in one opening and kind of transpose over into another one. So as a kind of a secret, if you can master transpositions, you can become a very strong player. So I suggest people read up on that. Just wanted to mention that real quick. So going back, we didn't see d4, but we do have e3. Knight comes to f6. And we even still have the ability to transpose here with a d4. You would get into a different opening. But we maintain the English Agincourt, and we're doing kind of like a hyper modern situation. We get into a really interesting position here pretty soon. We got bishop to d6, bishop to b2. We got castles by white. We got bishop to e2. We got c5, castles by white. We have b6, pawn takes d5, knight takes d5. We have d4. So we did get d4 in, but, like I said, it's still the hyper modern, English Agincourt situation. So we haven't transposed or anything. Bishop comes to b7. We have knight b to d2. We got knight to d7. Knight comes to c4. We got bishop to e7. We have rook to c1. Rook comes to c8. We have pawn takes c5. We got knight takes c5. Knight to d4. And then we have bishop to f6. And we see bishop to f3. Now I'm going to come back to something in a second, but we have bishop to a6. We got queen to d2, queen to d7, rook f to d1. And then we see rook f to d8. And something that I think, if we sit here for a second, you see that the position is almost 100% like symmetrical. So basically all you need is bishop to a3. And you guys can see you have perfect symmetry. I thought that was something interesting. Maybe it's not interesting to you, but I thought it was I was like, wait a minute, this is like almost identical. And it literally is if you play bishop to a3, but that's not what was played. But if we go back before, after knight to d4, instead of bishop to f6, a little bit more aggressive way to play was actually to go a6. We got bishop to f3 and we have b5, and this is forcing the knight away. The knight would probably come to e5, and after queen to d6, you got to do some protection. So knight comes to d3. As you guys can see, white has got pushed around just a little bit. It's not like overwhelming for black, but it does give a slight advantage. So that was definitely something else you could have considered as well. But like I said, we do have this position here. And it is actually in this position that I want you guys to pause it and see if you can guess what Peter Svidler played in this position. It doesn't give a crazy advantage, but I think it's a really cute move. It's just a really interesting move that he came up with. So go ahead and stop the video and see if you can find the move. Okay, cool. Like I said, it doesn't really give white much of an advantage. It's just kind of like one of those moves that you play just because I guess it looks good. But the move is actually knight to f5. There's a pretty simple idea behind the situation. It's because if you were to take, which is what happens in a game, you just be pretty much redirecting the pawn over and winning a knight. Well, not winning a knight, but kind of damaging the structure for that. So we actually did see that in the game. So we got pawn takes f5, bishop takes d5. We got queen to e7, bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, queen to d4. Queen takes d4, rook takes d4, and then we have bishop takes c4, bishop takes c4, rook takes d4, pawn takes d4. Okay. All right. So as you guys can see, white has kind of, gotten an isolated pawn over here, but it is a completely passed pawn. So it is very much different than this particular pawn here. Let me not do that. So if you look at it, black does kind of have a more questionable structure than white does, because they do have this, this double pawn situation going on, but it's not the end of the world. It's definitely not, crazy better for white. It's just got a slight advantage going on, but nothing to write home about. And actually, we've come to a point in the game that I want you to actually, did I miss that? I think I missed the novelty. Yes, pawn takes c5 was a novelty. I'm just rewinding to that. Yes. Right. Okay, so that was the novelty. I had to go back and skip that. I guess I'll just, whatever. Anyways, I was like, man, I forgot the novelty. Anyway, all right, cool. So we've come to the point in the game, again, where I actually want you to stop the video and see if you can guess one of the only moves that black can actually play in this position. And there's a really, really huge reason why this is like the only move to play in this position. So it's kind of dicey right here. So go ahead and stop it and see if you can guess the move for black. Okay, cool. So something that you guys probably notice when you're looking at the position is the fact that it's a little bit, it's not super deep. It's just kind of like, not on the immediate surface. But you guys should notice that this rook is opposite this rook. And there is a check on this f7 square, which I always say is a very weak square. And this knight doesn't have the ability to move to a square that protects the rook. So the problem is, like, if you go here, that doesn't protect the rook. If you go here, that doesn't protect the rook. If you go here, it looks like a really nice square because it's also like an outpost, but it doesn't protect the rook. So that's the main issue that you have. So the only move that you have to play, and congratulations if you found it, is knight actually to e6. Because you have to block this check, because if not, you're just going to be really just dropping, the rook. So you can't do that. So knight to e6 was what was played in the game. And then we see d5. The knight comes back to c5. We have bishop to b5. And as you guys can see, there's a lot of tactics. Even though there's only a few pieces, there are a lot of tactics present in the position right now. This is actually threatening b4, winning the rook again, because, you can't move the knight really anywhere because this rook is going to fall. So you constantly are having to worry about the situation. So it looks like the knight is doing kind of good because it's kind of outposted on that square, but it's actually in kind of the danger zone. So we do move rook to d8, giving a counterattack on the pawn that's undefended. So it's just in time. We got b4, knocking the knight. The knight comes to e4. Now it's legitimate to come to knight to e4. We have rook to c7, which isn't the soundest. It's not the best possible move in the position, but it's very principled. So something that I always like to do, like when I'm studying and I'm trying to work on my own games and things like that, it's not that I want to play perfect, because no human being is going to play perfect ever. But I want to just play more correct. Like I want to have a higher percentage of accurate moves and stuff like that, understanding positions and stuff like that. So I'm always striving to try to play more accurately. And that's pretty much the goal of all chess players. So we got g6, just protecting that weak pawn. We got bishop to c6, knight comes to c3. We got rook takes a7. We got knight taking d5, bishop taking d5, rook taking d5. Then we have g3. So we have created Luft for our king right here on g2. This is a very interesting point in the game because this is something I talk about a lot. Weaknesses that you have. You always want to notice any type of weaknesses you have and try to see if you can figure out a way to get rid of them. This is exactly what Wesley So does in this position because he notices that his weakness is F4 or F5, the F5 pawn, because it is doubled. So what better way to try to get rid of it than to push F4? And it is a perfect move in this position because it does present white with somewhat of an issue. The issue is, do you damage your structure by taking, or do you allow your king to be like really, really trapped? And so, that's it's an iffy situation for white. So they either have to give, which is what happens in the game, pawn taking F4, or, they have to try to shimmy over this way and allow F3, and then probably play something defensive like this, or move the king over and stuff like that. That's not really where you want to be because you're going to allow this rook to come down and start causing some trouble on this rank. So, like I said, you're kind of between a rock and a hard place with this decision. So, Svidler goes ahead and says, hey, I'm going to go ahead and just give up the structure. Pawn takes F4. We got rook to D4. We got B5. We have rook to B4. We got A4. Rook takes F4. Rook to A6. We got H5. Rook takes B6. Rook takes A4. We have rook to C6. Rook to B4. We got B6, H4, king to G2. And we have rook to B3, and then we have H3. And it is in this position that the players agree to a draw. This is literally dead even. There really is no way for either side to make progress. You can't leave this pawn. Let's say, for example, this is an in-game concept that you guys might be familiar with. So let's say, for example, we check. Let's say black. Well, you can't. It goes up. Let's go back to this position here. Let's say, for example, instead of moving rook over to C6, you check right here, right? The main thing that black needs to make sure that they're paying attention to is that they don't give white the ability to check. So, for example, let's say, the king moves up, you start to advance this pawn, you get behind it, and you go do something like that, right? As long as black remembers to cover themselves from checks, this is something that's really huge. And if you are the white side of this and you have the ability to ever do this, this will literally help you win the game. So, what black needs to do is make for sure that they don't expose their king to a check from this rook. And they maintain their position on this rank if they're going to expose their king. So the idea to remember is to cover your king. So you would play something like king to F6. You can also play something like that. You just have to make for sure that this rook cannot move with a check. And then it'll allow him to think. So let's say, for example, you play the pawn there. And let's say the king says, hey, man, I'm going to just wiggle over here. This would be wrong. This would be deadly because then the rook can come over with a check. And now the king, could move up like this. But then you would be promoting. And, you have to give this rook up for this queen. You cannot allow that to survive. And then you guys will see that the white side just want a rook. So, of course, the players usually at this level aren't going to do something that elementary. But you would be surprised how many players out there do not understand these types of concepts in in-games. So, as I always say, if you guys can understand in-games, you guys can actually do some damage. So, anyway, I appreciate everybody coming by. Spasibo, Maraming Salamat, Po, Aking Makaibigan. So for all of my other people that coming from the Philippines, let me see here. I got Maayong Buntog, Mayed na Agahan, Ninebag na Bigat. I'm spacing on this. Let's see, Maayong na Aga. I think that's a new one I learned. We have Masantes Yakabwasan. Let me see, what did Marhe na Aga. I already said that one, maybe. Buenos dias. And then I just learned one. It is Ibanag. Mapia na Uma. I think that's how you say that correctly. And for the phrase that I learned, I'm going to try to see if I can say it without looking at the paper. Mabuting pagbati. I think that's correct. Pagbati, yes. Mabuting pagbati. I'm trying to say best wishes to you guys. But yes, I appreciate it very much. And I will see you guys next time.